The aim is to tension up the drum evenly so that when you tap the head at each tension rod point, you can hear a distinct note, and that note is the same at each point. Take each drum off the kit and place it on the ground or a flat surface with the top or batter head facing up. Begin with the largest tom in your setup. If you begin with the smallest one first and proceed to the largest one last, you may find that you've tuned the smallest drum too low. In that case, you would find that in order for the largest drum to be lower than the previous one, you may have to start at a note below its ability.
You can always tune a drum up, but there's a point where if it's too low, the drum will just bottom out and a clear and distinct note is no longer achievable.
Place some kind of padding underneath so as to mute the bottom head. You only want to tune one head at a time. If the bottom head is permitted to resonate while you're working on the top head, how will you know precisely where the sounds are coming from? The first thing to do is grease the tension rods. Axle grease is ideal, but Vaseline, petroleum jelly is most commonly at hand. Silicone spray is okay, but it won't stay put. Eventually it will dry up or just drip off the rod inside the lug. Grease will stay in place and protect the tension rod from seizing or cross-threading. Just a tiny amount is all that is necessary, either on the thread of the rod or down the inside of the lug insert. Another important item is the tension rod washer. Make sure all tension rods have a washer on them. Without this, the movement of the tension rod scraping across the surface of the drum hoop will eventually cause the chrome to peel off and the rod will begin to dig into the hoop, making it difficult to turn. All the more so on a drum like a snare, which will usually have much more tension on it. Now, do each of the tension rods up finger tight and give each rod a full clockwise turn with your tuning key. Criss-cross from tension rod to tension rod opposite each other rather than going around the drum in a circle. The crisscross method is used at the start of the tuning process to ensure an even overall tension across the entire head. When close to the desired note for that drum and finer tuning is required, cease crisscrossing from one side of the drum to the other and just attend to whatever rod needs slightly tightening or loosening to bring them in alignment with the others and achieve exactly the same note at each tension rod point. If you're using a new glue in the channel type head, you may hear some cracking sounds. This is the excess glue in the aluminium channel becoming unstuck. To help release all the excess glue, press down at each tension rod point with the palm of your hand until the cracking sound stops. This is called the seating process. If you do not follow this process with brand new heads, the uncracked glue will give way when you're playing on them and the drum will quickly detune and then you'll have to start all over again. On larger drums, this may require quite a bit of pressure.
Some people actually put the drums on the ground and stand on the heads, once fitted to the drum, before they do the final tuning with the key. This may be excessive and run the risk of overstretching the head or even damaging your drum shell. It all depends on the shell's wall thickness and how much weight it can take.
Non-glued channel heads also make noises during the seating process. A creaking or groaning sound is produced as the edge of the head slides over the bearing edge when pressure is applied to the head. Applying candle wax to the bearing edge before putting your new heads on can reduce this. Take a wax candle and rub the shaft of the candle around the edge of the shell, the bearing edge. This will lubricate the surface that comes in contact with the drum head and reduce the grip the head has on the shell at high tensions.
The note you achieve on each drum is purely personal. Some people like to tune their drums to a higher note and others like to get the lowest note possible. Your choice of heads and the pitch or note you tune them to will be greatly influenced by the type and style of music you listen to and enjoy the most.
There is a tonal range within each drum shell, however, where it will respond the best. This is largely determined by the drum's diameter. Whatever pitch you try to obtain, the main aim is to get the note the same at each tension rod point so that when you hit the drum, that note is clear and distinctive. You may find that even though you've given each tension rod the same number of turns, not all the points are producing the same note. Just go around the drum from tension rod to tension rod, turning the key clockwise or anti-clockwise until they are all the same. As mentioned earlier, the crisscross method doesn't apply here, as that method is to ensure an overall even tension around the whole head. This finer tuning process is really just to correct the odd tension rod or two that are out of sync with all of the others. So, I'm trying to get the same note from each tension rod point, but it's actually not that simple, and this aspect of tuning can be the most confusing and frustrating of all.
Actually, there are 3 different things that I'm listening for to help me achieve my goal. First, there's the sound the head makes when I tap it. Second, there's the aftering tone. And third is a thing I call beating. Beating is an auditory vibration that occurs between 2 notes as they approach each other, just before they become the same note or unison. As the 2 notes become the one same note, you can hear the beating slows down and eventually vanishes, as in this demonstration on the guitar.
Here it is on a drum.
Once the beating or violent vibrations are gone, you know you've achieved your goal. Should the beating still be present, you know there's something wrong that needs adjusting. This is much easier to attend to on a guitar than a drum.
Without going into the physics of a vibrating drum head, it's very difficult to get all the tension rod points to vibrate at exactly the same frequency. Many factors are responsible here, including, but not limited to, the construction quality of the drum shell, the quality of the drum head, and the flatness of your drum hoops. The most frustrating thing is trying to listen to all 3 things at the same time, which does lead to ear fatigue. I just bounce between them and focus on the most obvious ones as they present themselves.
A helpful tip for isolating the head tap sound is to gently touch the center of the head as you tap around each tension rod point.
This mutes the aftering tone and thus the beating, making it easier to hear each tension rod's immediate note. Once very close to the required note, I often focus solely on the beating and try to eliminate it, yet this is not always possible.
You can have what sounds like the same aftering tone from each tension rod point, but still have beating, and sometimes that's as close to perfect as you get. As mentioned previously, there could be any number of factors preventing you from achieving a perfect result, but as you'll soon see, because a drum head isn't as perfect or as precise as a stringed instrument, it actually doesn't really matter all that much. Near enough is often more than good enough. This will take time and practice, and above all, patience. The human ear will tire quickly, so if you spend too much time being fussy, you may begin to experience what I call ear fatigue. That's when what you're hearing confuses you and you're unable to determine whether you should be tuning up or down to achieve the note that you think you can hear. If this happens, just take a short break of 5 or so minutes and come back to it later. You may be surprised to find that what you left is not what you're coming back to. Never mind, you'll get better and the whole process will speed up with practice.
Once you've got the desired result from the top, flip the drum over and do it all again on the other side. The note you're aiming for on this side of the drum,
the resonant side, has a huge impact on the pitch or the highness or lowness of the sound, whereas the batter head, the top head, although also responsible for pitch, is more responsible for the tonal quality of the drum. There is a wide tonal range of each drum depending on the difference or similarity of notes between the 2 heads. Ideally, you want to tune the drum so that it resonates as much as possible. If you don't like a long ringing sound from your drum, then there are a lot of ways to mute the drum later on. You can always reduce that ringing quality in a drum, but you can't always add to it. Better to start with too much and cut it back later rather than start with not enough. When you're finished and strike the top batter head, a long, clear tone should be the result. This will only happen if both heads are working together in harmony. A harmonious interval between the 2 heads will need to be achieved to allow this to happen. So what does that mean? Well, an interval is the distance between 2 notes, and this can be measured.
On a piano or a guitar, you can see the distance between each of the notes. The distance between 2 notes closest to each other is called a minor second. There are 12 notes in what is called a chromatic scale. That's a scale with all of the notes in an octave or all the notes before you can hear the same note again, only higher, if you're going up. Here are the names and the order of the distances between the starting note and the other notes that come after it all the way up to the 12th note. Minor second, major second, minor third, major third, perfect fourth, tritone, perfect fifth, minor sixth, major sixth, minor seventh, major seventh, and perfect octave. There's one more interval, which is called a perfect unison. This is simply the exact same note tuned to both heads. So, on a piano, a minor second is two notes closest together, including the black ones, or what musicians also call a half step. Two half steps are called a whole step. One whole step gives you two notes played a major second apart from each other. That spacing works the same on a single string of a guitar. By spanning 5 frets, that's 5 half steps, or 2.5 whole steps on a single string, you now have an interval, a space between the two notes, of a perfect fourth, that is, the open string and the 5th fret of that same string. The two most unharmonious or dissonant intervals that exist are the minor second, 1 half step, and the tritone, 6 half steps or 3 whole steps. Not a good idea to tune your top head and bottom head with either of these intervals between them. In general, anything over a perfect fourth is too high, but you can try it if you like. So that leaves the perfect unison, the major second, the minor and major thirds, and the perfect fourth. The bottom head can be tuned to the same note as the top head, a perfect unison,
or to a higher or lower interval of your choice. The results vary greatly and need to be experimented with to suit each individual. Just because you tune one drum with one interval doesn't mean you have to have the same interval between the heads of the other drums. The best results across the whole kit may vary quite a bit. One drum may sound great with a unison interval between the top and bottom heads, whereas you get the best results with a major third on the next drum. Once you've gained some confidence with this tuning system, you'll soon realize that you have a great deal of control over the way your drums sound. Couple that with the vast array and choice of different drum head types on the market, and you'll see that you're only limited by your patience or motivation for experimentation, and perhaps your budget. So, essentially, that's it. However, it's important that I be clear about something as I recap the main points. I've used melodic instruments like the piano and the guitar to demonstrate my point about measuring distance between notes. But don't be distracted into thinking that the notes themselves are important when it comes to tuning drums. Whether the batter head is tuned to an A sharp or the resonant head is tuned to a D flat is irrelevant. All that matters is the top and bottom heads are in tune with themselves. That is to say, each head is producing uniformly the same single note or tone all around the bearing edge. And you're taking into consideration the distance, or interval, between the top and the bottom heads. This is the secret to good drum tuning. Also, as the appendix videos will hopefully show, the lowest note achievable on each drum probably won't give you the best results. Many drummers love to get lots of bottom end from their drums, and in order to achieve that, they tune as low as possible, which is often out of that particular drum's natural register. A bottoming out low drum will never sound as good as an in-range, slightly higher one. Be prepared to experiment and find your kit's natural voice. Perhaps some of you will discover that what you thought was a dud kit or individual drum is actually never been tuned within its natural register. Or perhaps you'll have discovered a previously overlooked flaw, such as a bent or out of round hoop, which sometimes is relatively easy to fix. For a much closer look at the process and a wide variety of results, go to the appendix videos I've created where I tune multiple combinations of intervals on the 3 toms of my drum kit. Download the PDF from my website drumsanddrumming.com.au where all the notes and intervals have been listed. As an exercise, on that sheet you can highlight the tunings in the videos that you think work or don't work. Actually, it wasn't until I filmed all the tunings for this video and were able to play the edits back to back that I discovered some secrets my own drum kit had been keeping from me. Or should I say, I'd been keeping from myself.